This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's time to get back on the Take Control train with some updates to a couple Take Control books. And the conductor for this voyage is Mr. Michael E. Cohen. Michael, welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi there. Oh, I should have worn my engineer Bill Stulla cap from when I was a kid.
I didn't prepare you for that intro, but you know,
Trains.
we got there anyway. So we're going to talk about not one but two updates.
Right.
We're going to talk about Michael's update to Take Control of Pages, which brings this to version 2, update 4, 2.4. And also Sharon Zardetto's Take Control of Numbers, version 2, update 2, of which Michael was the editor on that book. So he is qualified to talk about it since, as he said pre-interview, he's read every single page.
I have. And in fact, every single example she gave, I had to do to see if it actually worked the way she described, because that's what you do when you're tech editing a book. And I was serving as tech editor, copy editor, all sorts of editor on that book.
We've talked about that a little bit before, Michael. You know, I don't think we always appreciate all the benefits of editing, all the editing passes that the Take Control books go through. And you alluded to copy and tech editing, both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we have to be meticulous because we're telling people how to use stuff. And if we are wrong, they're not going to trust us. So we have to get it right. And the best way to do it is have more than one set of eyes on any particular book. And you have to have really smart people doing it.
Yeah, your modesty is showing.
No, not me. I mean, the people who've worked with me, they've pulled my rear end out of the fire on so many occasions.
Well, and it's not like a novel. I mean, with all due respect to the novelists, you know, if there's something factually or inaccurate in there, you just write it off. But here, this is a whole different level of...
That's right. People are relying upon this to be true. Novels just have to be truthy. And I know I've written my share of fiction, so I know my way around that. You can do a lot just by saying the next morning, yeah, and leave out the complexities of the scene you just left off the previous night.
Aha. A writer's trick we just learned.
Oh, yeah, it's called the segue.
Okay. Well, why don't we switch around here a little bit and cover the numbers book first?
Okay.
Since this is version 2.2. Apple, you know, you and I have had these discussions before, again, on shows, that Apple keeps updating these, well, I guess they're still called iWork.
They're still called iWork. Apple still uses that, not prominently, but they still use it.
Right. So we're talking about Keynote, Pages, and Numbers.
Exactly, yeah.
And unfortunately, because these are not major revisions or anything, I'm afraid that we don't always appreciate that apps are just constantly improving and getting better.
Yes, they are. Apple has been on a very interesting cycle with these. It's like every 3 to 6 months, there's an update to the iWork apps. And Apple actually has a site, you know, what's new in Pages, what's new in Numbers, what's new in Keynote. And you go there, you can actually trace, it lists all the changes on the various releases they've made. We're now up to, I think, Pages 8. Is that the number? Wow. I've actually forgotten at this point. When it was rewritten completely, it was Pages 5, but I think it's 8 now. Let me launch and see what Pages actually says it is. But yes, it's been through a lot, and Numbers has been through a lot, and Keynote's been through a lot. And what they've been doing is periodically adding more features that they took away when they initially released it, and polishing up things. Yes, it's Pages 8, 8.0. My goodness gracious me. They've been adding back features that got taken away when they completely rebuilt it from the ground up. And they did this to Numbers, they did this to Keynote, and they did it to Pages. But in addition to adding those features back to the Mac apps, they've been making the iOS apps stronger and stronger and more in line with what the Mac app can do, until there's very little that the Mac app can do in Pages or Numbers that you can't do on an iPad instead of a Mac. There are a few things, but not nearly as many as there used to be. And it's making iOS and iPadOS, to be coming this fall, more and more important in Apple's ecosystem, in the environment of people who work with Apple equipment.
And that's something I'm embarrassed to say, that I'm one of these people. I tend to forget about the fact that these apps span not only the Mac and the iPad and the iPhone, but also spill over into the web as well.
Yes.
So there's
all three of them have web browser implementations that let you edit most anything you've created on the other platforms.
And so that means basically there are 4 platforms now, and especially if you consider iPad OS, now you have 4 different versions that have to be kept up to snuff. They try to maintain parity, like you say, try to add new features, keep them going, and yet continue to mature the programs themselves.
Apple's been doing it pretty well, and to my way of thinking, Pages and Numbers now are really world-class apps. I don't use Keynote so much, so I really couldn't speak to it, but I think it probably is as well. But if I had to choose between Word or Pages, or Excel or Numbers, I'd have to look at the specific project I'm working on to really make that decision, because they're both so darn good now. And quite honestly, Pages and Numbers both are much more attractive to look at on the screen.
Yeah. And I can speak to Keynote because I use Keynote more than Pages or Numbers, and Keynote is absolutely world class. There's no question. So with the 2.2 update, what do we have that's new in Numbers? Excuse me, and where is it new? Is it in the iPad or across the board or on the Mac?
Well, in the case of Sharon's book, and this is something you need to know about Sharon, she is meticulous, and she goes as deep into something as you can possibly go. And so her Numbers book, which is almost as long as my Pages book, only looks at the Mac app and just gives very brief mention to the others. So it really does focus on Numbers on the Mac. That said, in my own experience, I can say that Numbers on iOS, iPad OS, is getting pretty darn close to what Numbers can do on the Mac. But what's new in Numbers on the Mac is what we're really focusing on here, because that's what Sharon's writing about. And the new things that came in this book is the new organized inspector. You used to have, well, you still do it in Pages and Numbers. You have this inspector on the side, the right side of the screen. Usually shows you all your formatting controls, your document setup controls. In Numbers, you've got a format inspector. And now you've got an organized inspector that you didn't have before, which brings into sorting, filtering data, and a new thing called categories, which are kind of sort of close to and almost exactly like pivot tables, although they really aren't. But if you use pivot tables, you could use these instead. Those who know what pivot tables are will know what I'm talking about. Those who don't know what pivot tables are will go, but it's there. And it's an important thing for people who use spreadsheets a lot, who do analysis with spreadsheets. And the Numbers implementation is pretty darn interesting and good. Sharon has some good things to say about it in her text, so I take her word for it because she's worked with Excel for decades, so she knows her way around this stuff. Let's see, what else is new? Importing and exporting stuff. This is something that Apple's done in Pages as well. They keep improving what a friend of mine used to call eat and spit, stuff that it can import, stuff that it can export. And the capabilities are just a little bit stronger and a little bit more detailed. In Numbers especially, you've got delimited text files and CSV. It does a lot better job with. And in fact, when I was editing the book, Sharon sent me a bunch of test files so I could demonstrate for myself that her descriptions were accurate. So we had a really good time doing that. Let's see, what else is new? Oh, voice recording. I don't know if you think spreadsheets should be able to talk to you, but if you belong to that religion, you can now make your spreadsheets talk to you in numbers. There's now voice recording. And that's actually good if you use spreadsheets, to pass around at executive meetings or as part of a presentation. You have a canned speech or something, you can stick it on there. Or you can actually make a voice recording as you're reviewing someone else's spreadsheet and say, this stuff on cells A3 through B7 don't look right to me. Would you look into that, John? And just leave it as a voice recording.
Yeah, that kind of appeals to me. The idea that you could, while you're reviewing it, you could give your impressions live, or whether you're reviewing it for content or for editing.
And that's because Numbers, like Pages, partakes of Apple's iCloud ecosystem, which means if you have colleagues who also have iCloud, you can share your document and collaborate in real time or not as you prefer by storing it on your iCloud drive and sharing it with them. So they can actually open up the file you're working on, stick their voice recording right in there, and the next time you open it up, there's that recording.
Okay, so let's touch on that for just a second, because we're talking about you mentioned the collaboration part. So is it a real-time collaboration capability, or
Yes.
is it just what you said? I mean, can you and I both be working on the same thing and dropping voice notes into the same sheet?
You can do it in Numbers, you can do it in Pages. Yes. In fact, when you're in Pages, and I actually have a screenshot showing it, you see two sets of cursors moving around the screen, and they're labeled as to whose is whose, and they're color-coded. So you can watch the changes happen in real time. Same thing in Numbers.
The color coding is a really nice touch.
If you're not colorblind, but even so, difference in tonality will be enough to tip you off. You don't want to do an online real-time live collaboration with like 6 people at once, because you'd go nuts, but you can. I mean, you can do more than just 2 people.
And does the collaboration cut across all the platforms, so I could be on the iPad while you're on your Mac?
Yes, or in a browser. As long as you're using features that the browser apps support, that doesn't support the full range. But for basic content editing and writing comments, gosh, yes.
Very nice.
The browser apps for all of these are pretty darn powerful. They're worth checking out. They really are. If you've been using Google Docs and like that, and you say, oh, you can do word processing and spreadsheets, on the web. Well, you can do it with Pages, iWork, and Keynote. The iWork apps too, They can play the same game.
Well, it's interesting, especially with some of these things, but I think with Numbers and to a lesser extent Pages, because I don't think Google Docs is quite as adept at some of the features of Pages, and we'll get to that in a minute. But with a relatively simple spreadsheet, or maybe not so simple a spreadsheet, Apple's trying to fight Microsoft on one side, Microsoft Office, which requires a subscription for Excel, but they're also fighting the free version of Google Docs, which for a lot of people is pretty darn capable. And so I feel like at some point here we should touch on the whole Apple privacy thing, because that seems to be the differentiator, or one of the differentiators.
That is a big differentiator, because, iCloud is reasonably well locked down. It's hard to get stuff out of it. And Apple certainly doesn't sell your information about it. But you used an interesting term, that Apple's fighting Microsoft on one hand and Google on the other. And you can think of it as a fight. But, I'm not sure that Apple's really all that concerned about dominating with market share in this space. What these apps all do is become really, really, really good demonstrations of what Apple technology and iCloud can do to show other developers what they can do with their apps. And in that sense, they're very, very powerful marketing tools for the whole Apple ecosystem. Not that you should use Pages, but if you're a developer, we've got a tool chain to build apps that can do these sorts of things. And here's an example of how an app can look and act and operate. That's pretty powerful. So, I mean, there's other ways of just trying to get market share in the Office app market space. That's just one small battle. It's mind share.
Today's MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. What can you build on Linode? Pretty much anything you want from a server perspective. With fast native SSD storage, industry-leading processors, and a 1.4 gigabit network, your server is going to be really fast. So your resulting web presence is going to be really fast. With Linode's quick install options, you can get all kinds of servers up and running with just a click or two. WordPress, Minecraft, OpenVPN, Arc, WireGuard, Drupal, and more are all at your command. So creating is easy. Even if you have dozens of Linodes installed, their easy-to-use dashboard makes managing simple. So management is easy. Linode has data centers all over the world, from Newark to London, Singapore to Toronto. Linode has you covered. So managing geography-related matters is easy. In those rare instances that a problem does arise, Linode has 24/7 customer support. So support is easy. You can configure backups when you need them, with 3 times replication. So keeping the data on your server safe is easy. Increasing and decreasing storage can be done with a click. So adjusting to your growing or shrinking needs is easy. In other words, using Linode for your virtual cloud server is easy. That's why you need to visit linode.com/MacVoices right now to find out what it can do for you and to get a $20 discount on your first purchase. That's Linode, linode.com/MacVoices. If you've been wanting to check out a virtual server, now's your big chance. Go to linode.com/MacVoices and get started today. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. I have to admit, I had not thought of these as a technology demonstration or capabilities platform, but that does make a lot of sense. And you have the added benefit of giving your users all that much more power, and not to mention the whole privacy thing.
Plus, and then this really helps sell the product too. If you buy yourself a MacBook Air because you're going away to your freshman year, at Podunk College, well, you've got Pages and you've got Keynote and you've got Numbers on that machine already. 3 really powerful tools for you to write your papers and do your class projects. And that's one of the areas that Apple's really interested in. Now, a lot of the pushes they've been making on the iPad are for that educational market. And again, not to sell the software, but to help sell Apple hardware by providing compelling software solutions that come with the hardware.
Yeah, and I still maintain that Apple, the end users typically, unfortunately, don't look at the Apple platform and recognize the value of all the apps that come with it. I mean, there's so many apps, and they're not junk apps either. They may not apply to you. I mean, if you're not interested in video, then iMovie's not going to mean anything. But if you have even a little bit of interest in video, then you've got iMovie on the Mac, and of course in iOS, you've got Clips for the quick and dirty little things in iOS. There's so much value to the Apple platform with so many of these utilities that may not be there quite as fully featured on the other platforms.
Yeah, it's part of the problem is trying to define Apple as, are they a hardware vendor? Are they a software company? Are they a service company? Are they a floor wax? Are they a dessert topping?
Yes, they're a platform.
All of these things.
Yeah, they're a platform. They're a platform. So let's kick over to the Pages book, because that's the one that you authored. And
oh, goodness gracious me, yes. And we're at version 2.4 of the never-ending saga. And I know come October, as soon as iPad OS and Catalina, which, by the way, I can almost see from my front door. It's only 26 miles across the ocean. I'll send you a photograph later. I have them. This November, I'll have him be revising the book again, because now we'll be covering iOS and iPadOS. It will be covering the capability that comes with that, where you'll be able to open up 2 pages documents at once on the same screen on your iPad, and all sorts of other things. So there will be big revisions coming as well. But that's not here yet. I'm just covering the stuff that came out in April.
You mentioned a 6-month cycle. I mean, because it does seem like we've talked about the Pages book revisions quite a number of times.
They tend to do a big version every time a new iPhone or Mac portable comes out, usually around the time of a new Mac OS. And they tend to do a big version long about mid-spring when they come out with new iPads. So,
makes sense.
That's been their schedule the last couple of years, but you cannot judge the future by the past, because Apple may be changing things because of what they're doing now, which we don't know because they won't tell us, because they're Apple and their game is surprise. So let's see, what's new in Pages? I think the one big feature, the marquee feature, is table of contents. And that's been in Pages for quite a while, being able to create a table of contents you can insert into a document, which is nice if you're writing a novel. But this is a table of contents for you while you're working on the document. It's a navigational tool that drops down from the toolbar. So if you're using headers and subheaders in your document, and you give them the right paragraph styles, and then you say to the table of contents tool, include these paragraph styles in my table of contents, suddenly you have an itemized table of contents that drops down as a menu or pops out as a sidebar. You can click and go right to the part of the document you want, which is great for structured reports, any form of structured writing, any form of writing that's more than just an endless flow of text.
Yeah, I did not realize that's what this version of the table of contents did. I mean, that would be invaluable for anything more than about 3 pages.
And it's available to any Pages document on your iPhone, on your iPad, on your iPod, the new iPod that just came, the new old iPod that just, the iPod Touch, in your browser or on your Mac. The table of contents capability is there. In addition, they have smoothed out how table of contents being inserted in the document works. You can't do that in iCloud, but you can do that in iOS or on the Mac. And when you insert a table of contents in your document, it doesn't have to be the same one that's in the sidebar that drops down. You can tailor the one that appears in the document for different purposes. You can break it up so each section of your document will have its own table of contents. You can say this table of contents goes up to page 50, and then at page 50 there'll be another one that goes up to page 100. You can do it that way if you like. A lot of options for a table of contents within a document, in addition to the new navigational tool. So it's a really powerful feature, or a set of features kind of all mingled together.
So you said this is the marquee feature.
Well, it's a big one. It's a big change, and it pervades all 3. A smaller feature, but it's really important for, maybe a few 100 million people, is CJK vertical writing support. If you write in Chinese or Japanese or Korean and you use one of the scripts that goes up to down, right to left, you can now do that in Pages. So you can have a Pages document that is partly English going from left to right horizontally, then another part that goes vertically, then another part in Hebrew that goes from right to left. You can mix all of the scripts in the same document. Vertical text support has been added. It wasn't there before.
So I could see that being important for tech manuals and different that kind of writing, because you inevitably are writing the same thing but in different languages.
And in fact, Apple sells a lot of machines in Japan, a lot of machines in China, Wouldn't it be nice to have a word processor that let them write in their own language and their own script with a minimum of fuss?
Now they have it.
So, you know, that does increase your market share if you're looking to increase market share. So that's another one of the big things. This is another change, and this is a change that actually came to numbers as well, and Sharon documented it as well in her book, is shapes. You know, you've got the shapes palette in Pages and in Numbers where you can put graphic shapes on the page. And Apple expanded that recently, so there's literally hundreds of them, you know, maps of the world, pictures of microscopes, tennis balls, chopsticks, all sorts of things. Well, Pages, and I think Numbers too, has the ability to use drawing tools to actually draw your own shapes. You can now save those shapes to a category called My Shapes. It appears on that palette, but because of iCloud integration, any shape you create on your Mac and save is available on your iPad when you open that document up as well. Shapes now sync via iCloud.
Ooh, wow.
Uh,
So let me ask you about that, because I have not seen that feature yet. I shouldn't say that. I have not used that feature is a better way to say it. And you're talking about shapes you create. Can I bring a shape in, let's say a company logo, and have it saved in there? Oh boy.
Yes. You know, if you draw it the right way, yes. You can take an existing shape and customize it. You can create a bunch of shapes as a group and make that into a single shape and save that as a special shape. There's a lot of different ways you could do a company logo, but yes, short answer, yes, you can. So
Wow.
those all sync via iCloud, so on all of your platforms, it's available. Something else that they've added that also syncs are document templates. In Pages, you never create a pure new document. You always base whatever new document you're creating on a template that Apple provides. The most common one that Apple provides, of course, is named blank, and it's a blank 8.5 by 11-inch page. But you're starting from a template. You're not starting completely from scratch. Pages has also let you save any document you create in Pages as a template, so you don't have to do all the work again if you want to use that document over and over for other things. Letterhead, for example, special certificates, who knows, whatever you want to do in Pages, you can save it as a template and create a new document based on that template. Used to be the templates were only on the specific machine you were working on. So if you made a new template on your Mac, it was on your Mac. You couldn't get to it in Pages on iOS. You could only use the built-in template. So that's no longer true. Templates now share via iCloud. You create document templates on your iPad or on your Mac, save them to the My Templates portion of the template manager in Pages, and it will be in the template manager in Pages when you open it up on a different platform that you happen to be signed into.
So one thing I'm hearing is in both of these books, in both these programs, that iCloud is becoming more and more important. And the idea of using all your devices at any given moment for any given project is possible.
That was, in fact, the reason Apple kicked Pages, Numbers, and Keynote to the curb 5 or so years back when they rebuilt it completely. That was to build it on an architecture that would be cross-platform from the get-go, that would make use of iCloud. And as they've been going on, they've been beefing up all of the apps so they work really well on all your different devices and can exchange information and files seamlessly via iCloud. Because Apple is selling iCloud as a service. And it comes with your device. So they can sell you hardware, and they can sell you the iCloud service, because you want to pay for storage. The 5 gig that they give you with a new device is not that big a deal. But if you're going to make use of iCloud, you're going to probably pay for some iCloud storage, so you can put all your documents there and share them with all your devices.
I hate to take us off on a tangent, but let's do it anyway.
Sure. I'm all about tangents.
Yeah. That's something Apple has drawn a lot of fire for, that they only give you, a limited number, a limited amount of iCloud storage.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're talking about all these things. And okay, I understand why that, everybody likes free stuff, no question. But to your point, they are a company and they do want to sell you storage. But they're not just selling you storage; they're selling you additional capabilities here. And I
Yeah.
know, I'm going to come off like an Apple apologist, and so be it. But there is a business strategy here, and it's a good one because it does add value, so that you're not just buying online storage from company X or company Y, and we're not going to pick on anybody, but they're providing that online storage, and they're adding value because it has all these capabilities that go along with it.
Among other things, it's interoperability. You don't think about where your documents are on your Mac anymore because your Mac can store its documents folder in the cloud. In which case, your documents that you've been building up on your Mac all along are available on your iPad because that documents folder is in iCloud. And guess who can talk to your iCloud account? It's your iPad or your iPod Touch or your iPhone or your web browser.
But it's also important to note that while your documents do live in the cloud, they're also, for offline work, they can be on your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac.
Yes, yes, absolutely. What the strategy Apple uses, it's common in the syncing world, the idea that there's something called the truth. And that is where the one true copy is that hasn't been changed. And the truth is always in the cloud. But that doesn't mean you can't copy things to local storage, make changes. And when you connect back to the cloud looks at the truth, looks at what you have, sees it what you have as a later version. It updates the truth so everybody else now knows the truth.
Yeah, and we've had that discussion with Joe Kissel. That syncing, the truth is hard to find.
Yes, but it will set you free.
Well, yeah, let's hope so. But syncing is not as easy as you might think it is, and so everybody.
I wrote a book called "Take Control of Syncing" at one time, way back in the early days of Take Control, and became intimately aware of just how complicated that can become. Oh, it's maddening.
Well, it's maddening and it's dangerous because you're talking about potential data loss.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not done right, if you and I are working on a document, or scratch that, if I'm working on a document on my iPad and also on my Mac, it better darn well know what it's doing, because let's say I've done some work on both of those offline, and then I come home and both devices go back online. Mm-hmm. And I've made separate changes to both those versions. Mm-hmm. Wow. Then what happens? Then where is the truth?
What happens is that when you open it up on one of those platforms, it will say, you've got two conflicting versions. Do you want to keep both? Do you want to use this one or that one? And you get to make the decision, so you can actually save both conflicted versions and then deal with them separately if you like. It's smart enough to know that. It gives an out. It doesn't try to be completely automatic and completely transparent. And I saw it a lot while I was working on the Pages book, because I would have, my iPhone here, my iPad next to me, and my Mac, and I'd be handing the same document off one to another to see how the same thing worked on the different platforms, so I could write about it. And sometimes, two would be open at the same document we'd open on 2 or 3 platforms at once, and my browser would tell me, or my Mac would tell me, or my iPad would tell me, there seems to be a conflict here. What do you want to do about it? And the other thing that Apple has done, which is very smart with all the documents stored in iCloud, is they have a deleted files category, whereas anything you throw away, you can recover for a few days thereafter. If you open up the file manager in your iCloud browser or on your iPad, you'll see the recently deleted stuff. you can bring back. And they also have versions implemented, so you can go back to previous versions of your Pages documents, of your Numbers document, of your Keynote documents, on the Mac, in the cloud, on your iOS device.
And that's a feature that saved my bacon a few times too.
If you're going to be doing syncing and you're going to be dealing with multiple inputs, dealing with the same document from a number of different places, have in place the infrastructure that can handle that gracefully. And Apple seems to have gotten a lot closer to it than they ever have before.
And I'm sure you have used some other services where they have similar functionality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of surprising to realize that there are different approaches to this.
There are different approaches.
And some are real well done and some are not.
I use a program called Scrivener a lot because if you're doing creative writing, it's just darn incredible. And there's an iPad version as well, which is not nearly as powerful, but is great if you just need to do some composing on your own. And it syncs through Dropbox. But if you don't manage to sync everything up properly, Scrivener will begin to detect conflicts. And what it will do is, when it does sync, we'll say it's found some conflicts. I've put them here in a conflicted items folder to deal with later. So it has a different approach that way.
Yeah.
There's a number of different ways to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I've seen some of those conflicted copy issues on some other services, and you know, it's one of those things that I don't know when the tech will get smart enough, because it's all but impossible, because it almost would have to read your mind as to, you know, especially if you're working on a document on two devices offline and then bring them both online.
Mm-hmm.
Which one did you really mean? You know, which of the changes do you really mean? Or heaven forbid, if you try to merge them, well, that just can create a document that is a Frankenstein. You don't know what to do with.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, versionitis is something that I've worked in collaborative development for a long time in my life, doing software development, media development, writing books, editing books, all sorts of things, developing web pages. Versionitis will get you where, you know, you're handing off work to somebody else and nothing gets integrated properly at the right time. Suddenly there's two different versions you've got to deal with, or three different versions you've got to deal with. And after you finish pulling out all your hair and then getting, you know, the Rogaine out, you still have to deal with it.
yeah.
You know, having intelligent tools that at least are aware that problems can exist and try to help you without making too many assumptions is probably the only good way to go at the moment.
And I'd rather have it make less assumptions. And even though it's a hassle to have those conflicted copies, I'd rather have the conflicted copies than have it assume one direction or the other and then have me lose something that takes hours, days, whatever to recreate, or maybe it can't be recreated. So,
yeah, you also just have to develop good habits. You know, even though stuff always saves automatically now, it still doesn't hurt to save it manually.
Yep.
Because even if you're using something that uses the modern document model that Pages documents do, that Numbers documents do, that Keynote documents do, which is they're always saving on the fly. You can always regress to previous versions. You still have Command-S on the Mac. You can still save them. And when you do that, it saves a version, but that version is now time-stamped with when you did it, so you know that that's a known good point. And if you save regularly, just as a force of habit, when you're thinking, well, what am I going to write now? You may as well hit Command-S to save while you're thinking. Now you've got, you know, a fallback point. I mean, anybody who's saved the state of a game, you know, when they're killing off orcs, knows how important to have a saved point is in a game so you can go back after you get killed.
Orcs, Michael?
Well, you know, it depends on the game you're playing.
Okay. Hey, before
enemy combatants of some sort.
Enemy combatants. There we go. Before we wrap this up, I want to make sure that we touch on any other updates to pages that you feel are important for folks to know or are particular highlights of it.
There haven't. This was a relatively small update as updates go. It just made it a lot more usable. They added the two-page view into the iOS version, which is nice now that we have larger iPads. Another thing is, you know the difference between layout documents and word processing documents in Pages?
Well, I mean, I think I do, but what are you referring to?
There are two kinds of documents. A word processing document is the one you're most commonly associated with. Has a cursor on the page, you type along, you get to the bottom, it flows onto the next page. You just got this whole body area where the text flows from one place to another. That's a word processing document, and Pages calls it a word processing document. And that's the most standard templates, but there's also page layout documents. And that's where the page is literally a blank page. You can just stick stuff on. And if you want stuff to flow from one page to another, you have to stick a text box on a page and link it to a text box on another page manually. But it's really great for certain sorts of documents like flyers, certificates, all sorts of things that don't have a regular body, but have a lot of stuff in them. Well, you can now easily switch from a word processing document to a page layout document and back, not only in the Mac, but also in iOS. It's very easy to do, and it tells you exactly what's going to happen when should you attempt to do it. And for those people who use Pages a lot, that's actually a big thing. Sometimes I want to make a poster for my lost cat, and sometimes I want to write a novel. And I want to use the same program for both of them.
But you worry me just a little when you say, and it tells you what it's going to do to the document when you make the switch. What kind of thing?
If you have a word processing document with a lot of body text, and you change it to a page layout document, what's going to happen to that body text? It will tell you, and it warns you ahead of time, and you can make provision for it.
Oh, so if I have, let's say, a word processing document that is 3 pages long, and then I change it over to page layout, do I have to then recreate the text box and linking thing, or does it automatically create the link?
It will tell you your body text will go away, so you'd better save a version first. You can copy and paste it into a text box in the new document.
Okay. So it doesn't do the conversion for you.
No, I really wouldn't want it to, because it would probably make the wrong assumptions. I just have to redo the work anyway.
We're right back to the assumption thing again.
That's right, Do what you can, but don't do what you don't know how to do.
Yeah. Yes. I think I want a T-shirt with that on. Yes. Yeah. So both of these books are available now. And because these are updates, they are free for previous owners. Is that correct?
Right. Anybody who's bought version 2 point whatever of Sharon's book or of my book gets a free update to this one.
And if you haven't bought 2.0 versions of these books, go out and get them, because they're all kind of capabilities that you don't know that these programs have, because for better or worse, they don't always get the publicity that they should. And it may be the very feature that you really need or really have wanted.
I've never been a spreadsheet jockey. My mother's a bookkeeper. She knows a lot about spreadsheets, more than I ever would. But I certainly learned a lot from Sharon's book, having to work my way through it. And at least for a little while, I was a spreadsheet expert. The best way to learn a piece of software is to edit somebody else's book about that piece of software. It forces your mind to concentrate wonderfully.
Yep, I can imagine it would. All right, so Take Control of Numbers version 2.2 and Take Control of Pages version 2.4. The latter is from Mr. Michael E. Cohen. The former is from Sharon Zardetto. And you can get them both at takecontrolbooks.com.
And I'm not sure, but I think Joe's going to at least have a possible bundling deal for them for a couple of days, because 2 iWorks books should, be bundled together if possible.
Yeah.
But I don't know yet. We're still in discussion about that.
Right. Well, by all means, go and check it out. One way or another, they're great values. I say this all the time, and the folks are tired of hearing me say it, but it's like hiring Sharon and Michael to teach you these programs, and to guide you through what you need to know and all the features. Because hey, Michael just told me about a feature on the shapes that I didn't know about Keynote, so now I've got to go and check that out. Thank you, Michael. Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here, and we will talk to you again soon, I'm sure, because I think I hear another book calling.
Joe certainly hears a calling.
Take care. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye, Chuck.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Again, TakeControlBooks.com for Michael and Sharon's books that will make you more productive and help you get more out of these programs, no matter what platform you use them on. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.